Good evening, buenas noches, and thank you for tuning in. I'm Christina Nosti, Director of Events at Miami's independently owned bookstore, Books and Books. And tonight, it's my pleasure to welcome you to a virtual evening with Amber Tamblyn, featuring Samantha Irby, Amy Poehler, and Bonnie Tamblyn, to celebrate the publication of Listening in the Dark, Women Reclaiming the Power of Intuition, published by our friends at Park Row Books. As always, we want to thank our co-hosts, Miami Book Fair, and our partnering independent bookstore colleagues throughout the US, including our sister store, Books and Books in Key West, Literati in Ann Arbor, Left Bank Books in St. Louis, North Shire Bookstore in Vermont, Anderson's in Chicago, Tattered Cover in Denver, and Politics and Prose in Washington, D.C. Thank you for helping us present this event. Amber Tamblyn is an author, actor, and director. She's been nominated for an Emmy, Golden Globe, and Independent Spirit Award for her work in television and films. She is the author of 3 books of poetry, including the critically acclaimed bestseller, Dark Sparkler, and a novel, Any Man, as well as contributing writer for the New York Times. Remember, as you listen, that you can post your questions for the speaker in the chat, for the speakers in the chat or the QA feature at the bottom of the screen, and we'll get to those right after the conversation. And now, without further ado, I'd like to welcome Amber Tamblyn to the virtual stage. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Christina. I'm also joined here by my gorgeous mother. Hi, Mom. I'm so excited for you all to be here. I know that we sometimes feel Zoom fatigue. Tonight's not going to be one of those nights. We have real potty mouths amongst us. I am one of them. Sorry, Mom. It's just, you know how I am. And it's going to be fun. We're going to be talking about intuition. We're going to be talking about this book. We're going to be talking about the importance of reconnecting with your physical body, of understanding when it is giving you signals and signs and telling you that something is right or wrong, and helping you to maybe make a decision about your life, about your personal life, your professional life. And I think right now in this moment, more than ever, we need that. We need to be connected to our gut, to that voice inside of us that is telling us something about our lives that's really important. So before we dive in, I'm going to introduce my mom because she's here. And I also want to invite in Samantha Irby, as well as Amy Poehler. I'm so excited to have them here in conversation. So my mom is what we call a master facilitator. She works for the Ojai Foundation and teaches people how to listen from the heart. She teaches kids how to sit in circle and communicate and listen. She does this in schools. She's done it in prisons. She's done it all over the country. My mom is the whole reason why I communicate the way that I do, the way that I love, the way that I see the world, and the way that I empathize with others. So my mom is a great resource and reason for the existence of this book. We also have my amazing friend, Amy Poehler, who needs no introduction, but I'll give her one anyway. She's an amazing producer. She produced Russian Doll, which is one of my favorite shows, as well as a myriad of other things. She's also a kick-ass mom, super funny lady. She's also a director. She's also a writer. She does all of the things. Her essay in this book is so powerful. It's been singled out a bunch of times in reviews and by friends because it tackles, I think, one of the more complicated parts of intuitive process, which is not hearing the voice and instead sort of listening to the quiet and what silence has to offer, instead of filling it up with a voice, filling it up with that silence. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And last but not least, the bad bitch herself, Samantha Irby. Sam is an incredible essayist. She has written many, many books. Sam, what is the name of your new book that's coming out?
Quietly Hostile.
Perfect. It's the sequel to this. Quietly Hostile. So that's coming out. I cannot wait. I'm so excited. So thank you all for being here. So I'll just kick it off by saying, intuition is a hard word. And I found that so many people, when I approached them about this essay, were like, fuck yes, I'm going to write this. Yeah, I want to do it. And then when it came to writing it, we were all like, oh, no, I don't want to write this. This is not, I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know what intuition is. I don't want it. No, thank you. I'd like to speak to the manager. And so I want to talk to you guys a little bit about the process of writing about intuition. Like, Mom, for you, when I came to you with this idea about talking about intuitive intelligence and your own intuitive experience, what did that mean for you as far as what intuition is? Did you have an idea for an essay that you wanted to write, or tell us a little bit about how that came to be?
Well, it was indeed an intuitive process, actually. I didn't know what it was going to be. So in the unknowing and the not knowing, I just decided to be vacant with it.
Mm-hmm.
And then it came to me intuitively to share it as a story, because we're storytellers, and the work that I do, the process that we use called counsel, it's a dialogic practice. And so I thought, why don't I come from the place of what I know best, which is that. And then I thought the best thing that I could do would be to write it in present time. Mm-hmm. The story that I tell is in the present time voice. And that was a great rubric for me to work with. And from there, and then I remembered the most incredible story, one of the stories of my lifetime. And I thought, that's a great story to tell. Even though it was long ago, I said it in present time. And then it just kind of rolled out. And Amber, as my editor, you gave me great ideas and asked the right questions.
You put it in quotes, you guys. All right, continue.
And
we're already fighting.
Yeah, you were an inspiration to me, always are. So yeah. And I love the idea about writing about intuition, because I think it's such a primary instinct, and intuition is such a primary part of being human. It's so important. So yeah.
I love that. Yeah. And Amy, what about for you? When I sort of approached you with this idea, did you have something off the top of your head that resonated with you, or did you have to find it? Tell us a little bit about the process.
Sure. I mean, I think I took a bit more of a cinematic approach, because I was trying to visualize a feeling, which is, and it kind of tends to come out first for me there, trying to figure out what kind of what I'm seeing. That's sometimes an easy way for me to connect. And so, or an easier way to connect to the material for me. So at first I just started thinking about that feeling in where I've seen it done, like in film and television. And then I started thinking of it, that did help me center myself a little bit in terms of, what the kids like to call main character energy, but this idea of, if you are the main character in your story, like who is your voiceover, who is the person writing your story, and what revisions maybe would you like to make along the way, and most importantly, what are you missing by not taking the pause. I love your title because, and I love the quote from which you take it, because the listening part is really, I feel like it's, now that I've reached middle age, it feels like it's the back half of my life. So I feel like most of your 20s and 30s and 40s is trying to figure out your own voice, really to hear it, to recognize it like you do your own child's voice, to just find it in the crowd.
Right.
And then figure out how to stand up nice and tall and try to say it. And then
what I'm realizing, or just beginning to learn, is that the next step is to listen, and not only just for other people, but really just to yourself. Like, listen to the tapes you have, listen to the things you think you know so far. And so I love that that was in your title, and also it's in so many, it's a real theme in so many of the wonderful essays that women wrote.
Yeah, that's very true. I love the idea of taking a cinematic approach. And Sam, I feel like your essay is also very cinematic in that way, and incredibly funny, because we've all been the person who just didn't want to get in trouble and who was a little asshole about it. I had so much fun sort of like workshopping and talking with you about this essay. And to me, it's one of my favorites because it just feels like we're on the inside of your brain. And for those who love you as a writer, what a special, amazing place to get to be and to see the process, to see how the sausage is made, as it were. God, I hate that phrase, but it just works in this moment.
Well, it fits because there's only sausage up there. So it's
Just sausage. Tell us a little bit about, you wrote about writing and about the difficulty of that, and sort of finding yourself and trying to sort of understand the difference between what is intuition, like what is leading you somewhere, and something that is anxiety based. Maybe they're the same thing. Tell us a little bit about that.
I think when you first approached me, I was like, yes, of course, I'm in. I'll do whatever you want. And then some time went by and you came back like, what do you want to write about? And I was like, I don't know. Do I even have intuition? Like, I don't feel led by anything other than like fear or dread or apathy. And maybe maybe that's intuition, like disguised as those things. But when we talked about sort of examining anxiety and intuition as being like two different sides of the same coin, like that like struck a chord in me. I don't feel like a very intuitive person. I think like going through life, I decide to do things or not based on, like I said, like fear or getting in trouble or what do other people want me to do. So I had like kind of a difficult, like we had to work at getting it out of me, because I really struggled as a person who is sort of just kind of worried all the time, and I don't feel like I have a strong inner monologue, but I don't trust it to always know the right thing to do. And I'm very deeply like, I know that's what you want to do, but is that the good thing to do? So it was a challenge for me to write this. And usually I will admit this because we're family, but the things I typically write about, I don't push myself very hard. I'm like, this is a thing I know I can write. It doesn't feel hard. It's not going to be a struggle. And I appreciated writing something that made me have to like work at it.
Well,
so thank you to you for that.
That makes total sense. And by the way, that was almost everyone's experience. I don't know. There was not anybody in this book that was like, I have it all figured out. I'm incredible. I'm so in touch with my intuition. Like I know it like that. That was not it. And also that, to me, in the writing of the book and choosing all of you as contributors and working together was finding that joy and saying, yeah, it is really hard. And it is really scary to say to the world, I distrust myself. Here is the ways in which I distrust myself. I'm trying to do better. I'm trying to learn how to be a better servant to my body, to the connection between my body and my mind, so that I can see the world differently. And so that, and so many of those factors get in the way for all of us, because that's part of the conditioning. That is part of the whole total experience of being a woman. So one of the chapters in here, I wrote a lot about sort of the historical oppression of women's intuition and talking about, you know, not just things we've heard before, the Joan of Arcs and the you know, the years of women being burned at the stake for listening to voices, for hearing voices, but all the way up through the advent of modern psychiatry, and then even further past that, you know, into the modern world that we're in right now. We were just sort of talking about this in the green room, as it were, but you know, to live in a world in the 21st century where women are still being told not only to distrust their bodies and the signals that their bodies send to them, but also to have a whole entire government and Supreme Court say to you, you know, you don't know what's best for you. You actually don't know your body. We know your body. And so we're going to just take over because we feel we know what's best for you. And we're in that place right now, just as we were 5 years ago with the Me Too movement, with 2017's Me Too movement, where women en masse were having sort of a mass existential, intuitive movement, where at the same time, everyone was saying, I have a story to tell, and I'm not going to shut the fuck up anymore. I'm going to speak. And yet the backlash from that was the same, was all of this language about cancel culture. And again, trying to sort of dampen the voice, that as a total voice, large scale, you know, body of voices, but that this is also happening in our personal lives every day. So, you know, to me, I felt like what was so important was saying, hey, we don't have it all figured out. Your favorite essayists, your favorite writers, you know, these women who we idolize and love, my mom, my incredibly brilliant mom, like, we don't have all the answers yet, but we know that it's a muscle, and that if we flex it a little bit every day, we can get a little bit closer to trusting ourselves again. Even if the trust is saying, like what you just said, Sam, like, I have anxiety. I know how to lean into that. I know when my body responds this way. I know when I'm freaking the fuck out about something on a deadline or whatever it is. That is my process, and I trust it because I know it. So in that way, it is kind of like an intuitive response.
Amber, I have a question about that chapter because I loved
Yes.
it. Your research, like, was there anything there that you came across that just like, that still sticks with you? Something that was really, really surprising? Because there's a lot of really incredible connections in that.
Yes.
Sure.
So the chapter is, I should try to find it, but it's the chapter is called, I believe, I think it's called In the Mouth of the Wolf You Will Find It. No, it's a different one. But basically there was a lot of research that that went into finding, looking at, I think to me was sort of this realization, which came from a philosopher and scientist named Gerd Gigerenzer, a German philosopher who wrote a lot about intuition as not something that's out here. It is not a sort of woo-woo mysticism. It is an element of spirituality, sure, not an element of religion, but that it is a form of literal intelligence, of physical manifested intelligence, in the same way that your brain learns rational thought and knows 2 + 2 = 4. You could tell yourself that, and it is a fact. And that intuition is not just something that is alchemical. It is not something that is intangible. It is a real living instrument of the body that has totally been ignored throughout history. And you can read a lot of his work. There's an incredible quote that he has, which I think I actually have right in here somewhere. But that was really fascinating to me because, you know, I had also felt like, oh, it's just a feeling. Like, it's just a thing that you feel. And his argument was, it's not just a feeling. It is a real manifestation. And that, you know, that there's only so much of, okay, here it is. I think I found it. Gigerenzer, today, if a woman speaks out about something she feels as fact, she is branded too emotional, hysterical, crazy, uninformed. According to Gigerenzer, it is flat out wrong and an excuse to ignore the bigger picture. And then here's his quote. it's important to distinguish between the world where you can calculate the risks and other situations where you can't do that. Calculating the risk would be the case if you were playing roulette or the lottery, where all probabilities are known, all possible outcomes are known, all consequences are known. But in many situations, there is uncertainty where you cannot know the probabilities, not even estimate them. And moreover, you can't know all the future states of the world. He goes on to shed light on the value of leaning on your intuition as much as we lean on analysis in situations of uncertainty, when a definitive conclusion is not possible and where options are available. How can you know for sure the exact right person to marry or the absolute correct sole person to hire? You can estimate as closely as you want with analysis, but that still may not give you everything you need. Precise calculations are an illusion. In this situation, continues Geigerenzer, what's useful is heuristics that are robust, rules of thumb that have a good chance to hit, as opposed to a calculation that overfits the past. When I read that, my fucking head exploded, because it was a reminder that even rational thought decisions, rational based thought, like the most important analysis you can come up with, you could tick every box, cross every T, dot every I, but that you're still not going to get the necessarily the correct answer for yourself about a job or a husband or a partnership or anything. So why not lean on this other part of you that knows you better than rational facts? And that is the fucking body you live in. So anyway, that was I was fascinated by that. And in that chapter, there's a lot of really good information, I think, about science, about scientific based information. Good night, Dad. Is he going to bed? I just saw a kiss blown.
You said science and he got upset. He left.
Yeah, there he is. There he is.
Hi, Russ.
Hi, Papa. Sam, that's my dad.
Hi, Dad. Can I call him Dad? Or
You
is
can
that
call him
weird?
Dad.
He's everybody's dad.
He's
Okay,
he's
good.
everybody's dad. He
Okay,
really
great.
is. Anyway, so yeah, so I was really sort of blown away by that and thinking like, oh, I can refer to this. I don't have to be precious. I don't have to feel like I'm protecting this spiritual belief. It's not a belief.
Right.
Intuition is a physical fact. It is a form of literal knowledge.
Right.
And I think the othering of that truth and the generations upon generations, everything I just talked about with the Me Too movement and with, what's happened with Roe v. Wade and everything that's happened for millennia before that is to suppress this thing that is so powerful in women, and has been so powerful since the dawn of time. And it's no wonder that they, don't want us to be very in touch with it. To that end, I'm just curious for all of you, is there a time in your life, you can share what you wrote about in the essay or just in general, where you felt like you either had to question your intuition or tell me a little bit about how it manifests for you, how it's not worked for you in the past, if you've ever thought about its use in your life. Has there been a moment for you, Mom? Maybe you want to share the story about the fire up in the side of the hill in the woods, because I think that's a pretty kick-ass story. You're on mute.
It is a long story.
Well, give us the Cliff Notes.
Cliff Notes, driving down Highway 395. My friend and I see a fire on the side of the mountain in the middle of winter where there shouldn't be a fire. And we could have simply went, oh, there's a fire, and kept going. But I felt something. It was almost like a turning in my stomach that I felt. And I said to my friend, I wonder what that is. That doesn't seem right. And he said, well, should we go up there? And it was the dead of winter. And instead of saying, oh, no, we better go back to town, I said, yeah, let's go, which is kind of like, not like me in that regard, like Samantha. I'm sort of, I really believe in protecting myself. And here we are in a little Volkswagen Bug bucketing down the highway. So the Cliff Notes is that we get up the road finally to the top, and a very large lumber truck, a forestry truck, comes careening over the top of the road towards us and does not stop. And we have to try to back down because he keeps coming and coming and coming. And we can't get off either side of the road because it's a little tiny, it's not a highway, it's a dirt road that's covered with snow and rocks. And we're desperately trying to get out of the way, this crazy thing coming at us. And finally, he lurches over to the side and his truck gets stuck. And we go out, my friend, my buddy, Little John, gets out of the car and goes up and looks in, and it's a forestry worker who has been injured severely. He was doing something called a slash and burn. We call them slash burns, where they take all the deadfall timber and they pile it all up in the middle of winter and set it on fire and burn it to disperse and clean the forest. And the guy, one of the big timbers rolled off. I guess it was a pretty big slash burn. And when he wasn't looking, it rolled off and hit his face. He had wire rim glasses and it crushed the glasses into his eyes, just like I just did. And had we not followed the gut, what the heck are we doing in a little Volkswagen Bug going up into we're already at 8,000 feet and we were heading for 9,000 to go see what was going on. And I can say probably we very well could have saved this man's life. And because we went on that instinct, that hunch, I call it in the book, it was a beacon. And I even get my truthometer is going off because I get chills when I think about it. I think back to how we saved him. And,
Pretty incredible story, I think, too, just because, it's commonplace to see those slash and burns. You knew that like fire up on the hill or anywhere could be the forestry doing that. But in this particular case, there was something telling you to go up this very treacherous side of the mountain. And I think that's a really interesting example of it. Poehler, what about you? Anything in particular, like maybe even in business, like when you're trying to make a decision about, to do a project, to take a project on, what is your process like when you say yes to something? And what's your process like when you say no to something?
Well, I'm really trying to slow down. That's my work to do. I feel like and again, it's kind of that feeling that the things that helped you get to where you need to be might be the armor that you need to take off now or lay down. And it's a very hard process because it gave you so many beautiful gifts if you're lucky, but it's like saying goodbye to an old friend, right? So the speed of which I in my life have made decisions and the surety and the certainty in which I make decisions was like a big part of my self-esteem.
Yeah.
And for me, my work now, especially in work, is to really slow down because I just kind of like what Samantha was saying, like I'm not the most reliable narrator of my own. I have to just go really slow now because I have to be trying to ask myself, what do I want? What do I want? What do I want? Over and over and over again. I always make a joke that like the only thing we really know what we want is what we're going to eat, because it's the same question we ask ourselves every day. It's like, what do I want to eat? What do I want to eat? What do I want to eat? And we spend so much time going like, do I want to get tacos? I don't know. Do I want to? I'm kind of in the mood for pasta, but I had like the amount of time we spend, because it's just like a practice and a habit, and we refine it and we think about it and we're like, what am I in the mood for? And we picture what we're going to eat, all that stuff. And if we gave half the amount of time to like the most important decisions in our lives, I'll speak for myself. I tend to, for most of my life felt that one of my best qualities was my fast thinking. And And, you know, with that comes comedy and comes cleverness and comes like, hopefully, you know, people thinking you're intelligent or cool or down or okay with the deal and the rules. And then, you know, all of a sudden you're like, you're resentful of something you signed up for that nobody even asked you to do. And you just have to be like, how did I get here? And so the slow yes is really what I'm interested in more and more. And
Yeah.
and just creating the space to say, let me think about it. Hold on,
Yeah.
I don't know. What's in it for me? All those things that are just very deep questions that
Yeah.
that just create a little bit of space, a little bit of time for you to catch your breath a little bit. So I would say that's what I'm interested in. And also, you know, when I talk about humor, and Sam, you kind of talk about this a little bit too. Like, I think humor is so telling. It is for me because it's often my first expression of anxiety or fear or reluctance, but it's just it comes out a very sideways way. So, you know, we all know the kind of typical stuff, like when shit's starting to go down and everyone's kind of joking about it. It's like, it's about to go down. So we all know the danger part of intuition. Like everyone's like, haha, what the fuck is happening? And then something happens. It's always right before the spark. But I would say that I'm looking at that too, just in terms of what I joke about, how I joke about it, what I find, like, I'm just thinking that humor, it's just such a defense mechanism for me. It's often masking something deeper. So, that's why I loved your essay, Sam, because it's such a way to express oneself and to feel connection. I mean, there's no one I love more than funny people. And there's also nothing I love more than people who don't take themselves too seriously. It's like, oh, my people. But, and yet, I have to really look at how it often covers up for me, the deeper intuition stuff underneath what's it in place of, what's it, you know, taking the space of. So I'm looking at those two things, slowing down in making choices, and also like what humor does for me and does to me. Because those are two hard things, because I get such self-esteem from both. So it's kind of like sitting your two best friends down and being like, let's see how we can work on our relationship. And your two best friends are like, it's going great. What are you doing?
Amy, when you think about, I just want to ask one more sort of sub layer of that, because I'm so curious. When you're checking in with yourself and you're talking about the slow yes, and you're looking for something that is offering more of a slow yes, what do you receive back? Like, what is it, you know, when you're talking about this part of your, you know, where you're at in your life and your age and your wisdom, what does it tell you that you need more of, or what does it tell you that you need less of?
Oh, wow. Good question. I think I need just more of my actual body in the decision making. So you guys we're all kind of talking about, like, we're in this very disembodied time, right? Everyone's obsessed with our bodies, but we've never been more disembodied. It's really trippy. So
Yeah.
we're not in our bodies, but everyone's in our bodies except for us.
Right.
So everyone is up in our bodies, literally. So I think that sometimes if I'm, and when I say, when I say this is a practice, I am so level 1 here, but it is as simple as, what do I physically feel in my body? Not what I think. My brain has to take a break. And my brain hates that. My ego hates that, all that stuff. But I have to just be like, what is the sensation I'm having? And you guys talked about gut. It's like, what do I feel in my gut? What do I feel in my chest? If I picture this thing, what does it make me feel? Does it make me feel tight? Does it make me feel open? Does it make me smile? Am I sweating? Do I want to take a nap? I think I'm scared. I think I want to take a nap. You know, all of this, just like the very basic physical stuff that is often for me last on the list of in terms of informing me about how I'm feeling. So I'm trying that. That is a goal of mine, and it's super hard. It's just, it's like the last thing I remember, basically. The last thing I remember is how is it actually physically making me feel. And when you check in, of course, you're like, oh, I'm getting a headache.
Yeah.
Or, oh, when I think about having that conversation, my shoulders drop, whatever it is the thing. It's just like, yeah, it's just often the last thing we notice.
I love that. Sam, what about you?
So I think Amy and I are surfing the same wave, except instead of the slow yes, I am leaning into the fast no. Because I think one way in which my intuition is incredible is like knowing something's gonna be fucking terrible, like from the jump, like when you hear the pitch, the party, the job, like I know when it's gonna be good and when it's gonna be terrible, but I don't have let's say I haven't had, because I'm working on this, the backbone to be like, oh, no, not for me, thanks. I hope it's great. I'll donate. I'll do whatever you want, except participate. And so I have been, not to be the fruit who brings up therapy, but literally all I work on with my therapist is like saying no to things and admitting to her when I haven't said no to something I knew was going to be terrible from the jump, and then watching her like disapproving mom face as she's like, you knew, and now you're knee deep in shit and you're fucked and you have to do it and it's gonna suck for you, and maybe you'll remember that next time someone asks you to do whatever it is. So I think that is one way in which I know I have an intuition, and I think, we all live in a society, right, where you're not supposed to turn things down. You are supposed to be enthusiastic, and you are supposed to be helpful, and you're supposed to, like that. Those are like the tenets of being a good person. And I think sometimes the lines blur when it's like, well, are they taking advantage of me, or is this an opportunity for me? And I think for many people working in creative fields, the line is extremely blurry, between like what is for you and what's actually for the person who's asking. And sometimes it's mutually beneficial, but most times it isn't. And most times I know that from the jump, but I'm too afraid. And it's funny because nothing's going to happen, right? Like no one's gonna hurt me or kill me. Like maybe someone will be mad, or they'll like text the group chat that I'm a fucking bitch, but like I can live, So I think the part of my intuition that I truly am trying to sharpen, because I don't take a whole lot of risks, right? Like there's not a lot of things where I'm like, God, you got to be more careful. You got to listen to yourself more before you walk into that room full of chainsaws. Like it's nothing like that. Like, even boring person, but it's kind of the emotional or professional things that I get dragged into that I know are going to be bad. And it's like my therapist is always like, you have to care about yourself first. And I'm like, oh, that person, I don't care about her. Let me impress this person I just met by like overextending myself. So the intuition I am most interested in, like, sharpening like a shiv, is the say no before you get into the thing that is going to be bad. And I'm getting pretty good at it, unfortunately, for anyone who asks me to do anything I don't want to do. But it does feel, and like I used to get like self-esteem from being selfless, and yeah, you can come to me, and yeah, I'll do that. And of course I'll do it with a smile, because everyone, I mean, Amy, we could talk for a million hours about like the trap of being a funny person and how no one lets you be anything else. You don't get to be a mad person, you don't get to be a person who's feeling things. You know, you just have to be the joke monkey, and people do not want to take a no from the joke monkey. So I just am trying to lean more into the, like, you know, I see what the end of this is going to be, and I'd like to avoid that. So I'm not doing it. It's tough. It's a struggle every day. Every day is a new like thing to say no to that I struggle with, but I'm trying.
I mean, those are just all such powerful perspectives as far as, you know, your intuitive journey, your connection with it, and our, you know, continued attempts to connect. It's hard. I mean, you know, that's why the book to me feels like such a great exploration of everyone's different kinds of experiences and stories, because everyone's got a different one. I remember, you know, at the end of Jessica Valenti's essay, which struck me when she sent in a draft, and I just went, oh my God, like what a way to frame it. But I feel like this is what I'm hearing from all of you to a degree too, which she says, she talks a lot about not trusting herself and all of the ways in which she has not been able to know what intuition is, or what, you know, what her body tells her, or to trust any of that. And so at the end of the essay, she says, when I can't trust my intuition, then I trust my community. And I loved that, because it was this idea that, you know, even a body of intuition is not necessarily for a single person. It can be something that is surrounding us. It can be the people around us, can be a body of intuition that is supportive in seeing who we are, and giving us good feedback, and sort of mirroring back to us what we so desperately need. And to your point, Amy, which I think is just so true, everyone's all up in our bodies. You know, we're in a world, in a society where, you know, especially because of the pandemic, we don't even really get to see each other face to face anymore. We don't get to fight face to face. We don't get to argue. We don't get to like be mean and mess up and say bad things. It's all happening on texts, if it happens at all. Otherwise, it happens on the group chat, right? As Sam said. And then not only that, you know, Amy, you're not in the hellscape that is social media, but it, you know, not only that, we are also dictated to by algorithms the ways in which we are allowed to connect with audiences and with other people. Right. So, you know, we are really in this place of mass disconnection that is aimed at, you know, every area of our livelihood, every aspect of it, the physical, the mental, the emotional, you know, and our central nervous systems are like, you know, arrows shooting in the night, like which way do I go? Where do I land? We have about 15 more minutes. I wanted to take some questions. If anyone has out there in the audience, I hope you're enjoying this. I could talk to these gals all day. So I'm going to take some questions here. Daniel says, thank you for this lovely opportunity. Were there people in your lives who inspired you to listen to your gut and to follow your creative intuition? Does anyone want to take that question? It's a really, really good one. Anybody? Think about it. I'll start. I'll say, you know, obviously my mom. I think that my mom has been a real driving force in my life to get me. I was a crazy child with a lot of energy who would, you know, I was the kid that would rip my literal hair out and bang my head against a dresser. And my mom was like, what have I done wrong? And it just turns out I was just that kid. I was just nuts. Had a lot of energy, had a lot of feelings, had a lot of emotions. And it's because of my mom's, I think, centering of me and sort of helping me to listen and to hear my body and to hear the world outside of me, that I have been able to, you know, even come close to writing a book like this and other works. So Mom, I would say you're my you're my person. You're my someone that has really sort of gotten me in touch with my intuitive side.
I'd like to
What about you,
offer
Mom?
a little nostrum from one who's been my touchstone, which is Russ, your daddy, my husband. We've been together 40 years. He has a saying that's wonderful, and he believes, this is the saying, he believes in the positive power of negative thinking.
Me too.
And I think that the negative thinking is okay, you know, if it totally governs our life, but it's a human, that's why we're here today, because we did think negatively, and then we didn't go up and pet the saber-toothed tiger. Oh, kitty, you know, we ran away because we knew it was danger. So it's a natural thing.
Love that.
Poehler, Sam, anyone in your life that has sort of helped you seen an intuitive part of yourself?
I have a friend, my friend Anna, who I have known since we were like 10 years old, who, and I will say this is her intuition, not mine, who from our very early days when I was like writing little stories was always like, you should write. And I was like, writing's not a real job, like get out of here. And she saved everything I wrote in middle school and high school, and I think she still has it I know she still has it in a box in her closet. And so it's not really my intuition. Like I had to wait until some things clicked into place before I was like, I'm gonna write, i.e. I had to get a deal. But I was not gonna like start. There's nothing about like talking about myself that was worth like starving or struggling. I was like, I'll wait till someone offers to give me money and then I'll try to do this as a job. But it is, in thinking about Jessica's piece, leaning on the intuition of other people can be, you know, or when someone sees something in you or for you that you don't see for yourself, it is so validating. And it also, like, as terrifying as it is to be seen or perceived, when someone like knows you can do it, it's like an incredible feeling. And I'm really grateful to her for being that person for me.
That's so nice. These are also nice. I would just say, like Russ and Bonnie, I have like parents who kind of live in both of those worlds, and my mom is a really loving, open communicator, and my dad is a little bit more like healthy and suspicious, and the combination of them is really good, because my dad used to do like a very paper moon kind of version of hanging out, where we would be like, I can remember we'd be at the mall. I was a little kid, and he would be like, go and talk to that person. And then he'd have me come back and say, what did you think of them? What were they like? Did you like
Wow.
them? Did you? And I would say, well, they were kind of weird, or they were kind of, you know, and we would like practice. He really embodied me with a lot of power and agency at a young age. So I felt very like grown up in terms of how I could talk to or talk about adults. And it was something I think about, I try to do with my kids all the time, which is just to like give them safe spaces in which to figure out how they feel about adults. And I remember my dad used to do that. I don't think he knew he was doing it. I mean, honestly, it was just us like gossiping about people at the mall, but really it did make it, you know, again, just a habit where you start to like be able to have some sense of figuring out how you're feeling. Yeah. And so I think it was probably a combo of those, of my parents, that really did help me, certainly in the beginning.
You know, you mentioned your kids, Amy. And so one of these, there's two different questions in here from folks who are sort of asking about, you know, the difference between my friend Kelsey Kawana, who's an incredible writer, a young filmmaker. She was asking about the difference, or the concrete differences between female intuition versus male intuition. Somebody else had also asked about sort of the gendered conversation around intuition. And this came up last night at the Strand. I was in conversation with America Ferrera, Meredith Talusan and Ronan Farrow. And it came up there, and America had the most powerful response, because my response was to say, you know, intuition to me seems like such a much more natural thing for men, because they haven't had an avalanche of a world that has told them to be quiet and has told them to disassociate from their physical selves. But I think I missed the entire point of it that America brought up that I thought was so fascinating. And she talked about how important this book is and this conversation is for our young boys and for men, to not be afraid of the feminine, to not be afraid of the work of knowing your body better, and what a different world we would be in if men were more connected to their intuitive process, but also were more aware of women's intuitive process. And I wonder, Amy, if you just would speak for a minute, like with your boys. I think that's so cool that your dad did that, because I do that with Marlo. I want her to tell me how she feels about other people. I don't want to tell her and dictate to her, you have to hug your auntie, you have to do this. Like, I want her to have the agency to tell me when something doesn't feel right for her, and to know the difference between, oh, she's just being like a little bratty kid, and no, this is a kid who is highly sensitive and aware. And I'm going to honor and trust that awareness in her that she is building for herself. So tell me a little bit with your sons, sort of, is there anything that you do with them to try to, just tell us about raising boys in this absolutely insane world, and keeping them in the feminist conversation of everything we're talking about.
It's wild. It's wild. And I love this question, because I don't think intuition is gendered at all. And also, I think that my son's generation's exploration of gender will be their gift to the world. I really do believe that, the 13 and 14-year-old boys and girls or non-binary people of the world will deliver a version of how we can look at gender that we haven't even, I'm speaking for people in my generation, haven't even thought of, that will blow our minds. I was just reading in general some work, and I'm sorry, I can't remember the author, and this may be maybe conflating a lot of authors here, but there's a whole beautiful movement, I think, in terms of, and it comes from nature, right? Which is this idea that we are all trans, that we are all evolving and changing throughout lifetime, and just some of us have a lifetime of that. And what that brings up to me, to your point, is that I think what's starting to happen in very slow ways is, I think my dad had those conversations with me because he was trying to maybe subconsciously arm a young woman or girl with maybe things that she didn't always get to sharpen.
Yeah.
But I see more and more that there is this cultural feeling that there is no, like, women's intuition is going to be, I think, a funny phrase as we get older. I think it's just going to become intuition, because I do see the mothers and fathers of young boys really helping, inviting, suggesting young men, like, take a look at that. And and every, the one thing you learn when you have kids is, when you have one, you're like, oh, this is my kid. And then when you have the second one, you're like, oh, this is a totally different kid. And like, you learn really fast that every, the thing that, like, every single person has a completely different operating system that they're born with. So to answer your question, I feel like it's a lot of paying attention to what each individual kid, like, how they're moving through the world, what they need. Friends are really important. Peers are really, really important. On how they're, like, figuring out their lives. And I think lastly, and most importantly, they're just watching what you do. And you can say whatever you want, and you can tell them whatever you want, but if you don't do it, they know, and they're onto you. So they're just always watching you. So it's like everything we always, it's like, take care of yourself, you take care of your family. You put, you do your own work, then you're doing work for the people that you love. Like, so it's always just comes back to our own work, always. So it's a little bit as like, just, remembering that they're always watching, and paying attention, and they care about, and they're caring about what you care about. Cause it's just, you're living in a tiny community and they're paying attention to what the rules are or what people think is important.
That's so true. I love that. We're about finished here almost, but I do want all of you to sort of leave us with, and I should say, I want everyone to leave us with sort of a little nugget of their own wisdom. Anything that you have that you want to share, as far as, people who want to connect to their intuitive process, who want to sort of learn more about this, who want to sort of become more connected with their most authentic self and to trust their gut. I will say in the back of this book that all of you have tonight, the very last essay is called The Roadmap Revealed, and it is a literal step-by-step guide in which I sort of walk you through how to ask yourself a hard question, or when you're trying to make a decision about something. And it is really meant to be read often, to return to when you are unsure of something. And it is a way to actively flex that muscle, to work on the muscle that we've all been talking about, and to come a little closer to trusting your gut and to being able to harness and listen to what that voice is. So this is not just a collection of essays from these incredible women, but it is also at the end a sort of compendium of all of the voices and all of the ways in which these incredible women process their intuitive intelligence, and sort of helps you walk through the active practice of doing it. So it is a practical guide for each of you, because I do feel like this next generation, if girls and boys and non-binary kids could grow up without half the shit and certainly half the therapy bills that we've all had to endure to trust ourselves, to trust what our bodies tell us, the world would be a vastly different place. So I'll leave my piece there, but if all three of you want to just share a little nugget of wisdom that you want to tell someone who has never thought about this, who's never had to ask themselves these kind of questions, sort of maybe a little piece of where to begin.
Okay, I'll go first.
Oh, no, you go ahead, Samantha.
Okay, mine is short and moronic, but it's a thing I'm trying to do is ignore the secondary voice, right? Like the first voice is like, don't do that, say no, or do that, talk to them, whatever it is, the secondary voice that tries to talk you out of it, ignore that voice.
The middle manager.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That is so good.
So good. That's so good.
I just wanted to speak to the way the female and the male brain work, that women are bicameral, and it goes, that's why we have trouble deciding, because we were built that way, because we had to take care of large circles of primitive people, whereas the men, they fire on one side or the other, but they are intuitive, and I want to honor that they're, all information comes through the gut. It's and it is received in the heart, and so the men process it in a different way, but they're still very intuitive. They are, and as a combination. And Amy, it's interesting to see how we are transforming, that maybe these two ways of thinking will bring a more powerful human being onto the planet, that we can work for the greater good for everybody. And listening is the most important. Listen.
Indeed. And I would just quickly add to that, which is, I think it's just the reminder that it's okay to change your mind, and you should surround yourself by people who can tolerate when you do that.
Oof, that is some very, very, very good advice. Amy, I'm going to put a giant sign on my poster board here in my office that says, what do I want to eat with a question mark? I'm for real putting that on my board. I've got some doozies on here. I've got some really good ones. That, and also Jack Hirschman, who says, be severe with your time. And I love that. So thank you so much. Thank you for being here. And I just want to say one more time to everybody, you have books tonight, but if you feel like purchasing a copy for friends or family, for the dude in your life, get this book. Please don't buy it from Amazon. Please buy it from one of these incredible bookstores. Support independent bookstores. Bookstores are the most important thing in the world. They are my church. And so please make sure you buy from your local bookstore, support them, and support books.
Thank you so much. Thank you all. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for your thoughts and your insight. And thanks to everyone watching, and to our partners, and to Miami Book Fair. And I hope we'll see you in person sometime soon. I hope. But thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you. Thanks, Amy, Sam, and Mom. Thank all of you so much for being here with us.
You, Amber. Thank you, guys.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Night.
Bye.